Welcome back. And most of us would like to stay in our homes for as long as possible, but as we age, sometimes challenges make that impossible. And to help us navigate that, we're joined by Stephanie Erickson, family caregiving expert, and Matt Del Vecchio, the owner of Liana's Retirement Home Search. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
So, Stephanie, let's start with some of those challenges that may come up that might make it a situation where somebody does need to leave their home.
There are a lot of them, but I'm going to illustrate it. A family that I was working with last week, the son told me that his mom called him and said, you know, I've had a headache for several days and I don't know why. So an hour later, he shows up at the home, opens the door, and sees his mom is bruised from the top of her head all the way down the side of her body. I know. She doesn't remember what happened at all. No recollection.
Scary.
Exactly. So, of course, she goes to the hospital. But this was a turning point for the family when they realized, okay, mom is no longer safe. Now, she had previously had cognitive problems, so that's one of the reasons why people need to move. Healthcare issues, mobility challenges, which Matt can talk about as well, and just your typical, this house is too much for me, I need to downsize.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those mobility challenges, Matt.
Yeah, so we call them trigger events sometimes that Stephanie was talking about. You know, if the house becomes too hard to navigate, you got to go up the stairs. Also, senior isolation. Maybe you're lonely. And so these are all little trigger events. Caregiver stress. You have a spouse that's actually getting sick now, trying to take care of a loved one. So those are other trigger events. But mobility is probably the biggest one as to why some people start looking for an alternative where they can just get rid of those stairs and have an easier lifestyle.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, let's talk about, you know, the psychological process that someone is going through when they have to make that move. I know I've lived it with my grandparents, and it's not always easy.
No, my grandmother, in fact, when she was about 85, she started realizing, okay, I want to move to an environment where I'll have nursing care should I need it. It took her 4 years to finally get to the place where she could actually make that move. Yeah, because you don't want to say goodbye to your home. You've lived in here, you have all these family memories, and then there's also, once you move, you realize, okay, I'm not going to have the privacy that I used to have anymore. People are going to be knocking on my door, coming in, doing things for me that I used to do for myself. It's hard. There's a lot of grief involved in. Also, what happens with people is sometimes one person's sick, Matt referenced that, and now you have to split up a couple. I mean, can you imagine, you've been married 75 years and now you have to live in different environments? It's really hard.
But I guess there are some options where maybe it's possible to keep couples together.
Yeah, exactly. There are options where the decision has to be made first and foremost on the care required. You know, safety, security care has to come into play. But there are options where if the couples do want to stay together, absolutely. We can take them on certain residences that specialize in keeping couples together where one person's care levels are more than the other, but they want to stay together.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of, you know, sometimes it could be, I just think of moving. Like, if you're moving at home with all these memories, it can be overwhelming. Yeah,
it's you're living in a 4 or 5 bedroom home, and all of a sudden you're going to a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment type complex. So downsizing is a big stress. It becomes overwhelming. But there are ways around that. You know, always start early. You want to start a room at a time if you can. We always recommend, one of the big trend now is downsizing parties. Invite your kids,
Pizza and beer.
even the grandkids, because your grandchildren only look at you as old. They've never seen you young, and you're going through the boxes. Like, wait a minute, you lived in Europe.
That's such a good idea. I love that.
Your legacy comes out, your heritage comes out, and it is really nice. And it's one way to help with the downsizing process.
And I know I personally, we moved my grandparents, and I took like pieces from each of their homes that now I have at my home. And when they come over, it's a nice reminder that it lives on. You were saying, Stephanie, that it could take 4 years. Is it something that you recommend to like plan in advance, or?
I think it's really important for you to kind of think ahead. If I were to need to move, where would I want to go, and start that process. Start looking when you're healthy, when you can make those visits, so you're making an informed decision, and give yourself time psychologically to process that change. Unfortunately, and I'm sure Matt would agree, it's that trigger situation, that acute event where all of a sudden now people are making a change in a crisis, and they're not really their best selves in terms of thinking and decision making. So I think planning in advance is really important.
Yeah, proactive versus reactive.
Yeah.
Be proactive. This can 2, 3, 4 years, no problem. I got a call last Thursday night from a panicked daughter. The doctor was at the hospital with mom, and a doctor said, you can't go back home. You need to be in a residence. That's crisis mode. That's emotional. It's overwhelming. You need to make decisions. So try to be as proactive as you can.
Before that happens.
Yes.
And so we should say that Lianis is a free service that people could use?
It's a free service. You call us. We do an assessment. We take you on tours. We narrow down. There's 800 residences just in Montreal. So we want to narrow that down to the top 2 or 3 that would be ideal. We go on tours, and hopefully we find the right residence for mom or dad.
All right. Stephanie, Matt, thank you so much for
Thanks,
the
Tina.
advice. Some great advice.
You.
Hopefully people don't find themselves in that situation of high stress where they have no choices and plan in advance. Okay, stay with us. We have plenty more BT coming up next.